Welcome to this module on writing effective scientific abstracts for the Union World Conference on Lung Health. This module has been prepared by the Conference Scientific Committee, with input from the Union Training and Education Department. We would like to acknowledge the contributions of Amrita Daftari, Associate Professor at the School of Global Health and Faculty Fellow at the Dada Lehen Institute at the York University of Canada, for her review of the guidelines on non-stigmatizing language, and Ari Colosio from The Lancet for her writing tips. By the end of this module, you will be able to understand the key components of a successful scientific abstract, identify common pitfalls that lead to abstract rejection, apply best practices for clarity, structure, and scientific rigor, tailor abstracts to align with the conference's themes and criteria, gain insights from real examples of accepted and rejected abstracts. This is the outline of the module. We will first look at the key elements of an abstract and common weaknesses. Next, we will review examples that show a low and a high-scoring abstract. We will then provide writing tips and a checklist to use before submitting an abstract. Let's get started and make your research stand out.
You have 1 minute to pitch your research to a global health expert. What would you say first?
Every year, hundreds of abstracts are submitted to the World Conference on Lung Health, yet many are rejected, not because the research lacks value, but because the abstract fails to communicate that value effectively. A well-written abstract is crucial, as it provides the first impression of your work to reviewers and attendees. It must be clear, well-structured, and specific to highlight the significance and innovation of your research. A strong abstract is your 1-minute pitch in written form. Abstracts that lack clarity, structure, or relevance are often overlooked, even when the underlying study is impactful. For this reason, understanding how to craft a compelling abstract is essential for researchers, health professionals, and program staff aiming to share their findings at TB-related conferences. There are two types of abstracts: abstracts for research conducted across all disciplines, and abstracts presenting lessons learned from the implementation or management of programs, projects, or policies. An abstract for research conducted across all disciplines typically includes 4 key sections. Background. This sets the context and explains why the study was needed. Methods. What actions were taken or strategies implemented to address the problem. Results. The evidence showing what happened as a result of those interventions. Conclusions. The main takeaways and implications for practice or policy. Together, these sections provide a clear, logical structure that helps reviewers understand your work. An abstract presenting lessons learned from the implementation or management of programs, projects, or policies has slightly different sections. Background sets the context and explains why the intervention was needed, same as before. Description provides a clear overview of the program, project, or policy, including its duration, setting, and location. It should include details about the structure, target population, if applicable, and key activities and interventions undertaken. It should also include information on data collection methods, success metrics, definitions or outcomes, if applicable, and any analysis conducted. Lessons learned includes the key findings or outcomes as clearly and specifically as possible. It should provide a thoughtful analysis of lessons learned and highlight best practices. Where relevant, include both numbers and proportions, and apply statistical tests if appropriate. Reviewers prefer data disaggregated by age and gender where possible. While this section should remain concise, it must contain enough detail to support a critical appraisal of the results. Conclusions. The main takeaways and implications for practice or policy. These sections guide reviewers through your study clearly and logically. All abstracts are graded on 7 key criteria. Relevance. Does the abstract focus on lung health, including tuberculosis and tobacco, and align with the themes of the Union World Conference on Lung Health? Innovation. Highlights new aspects like novel methods or workflows in the research. Significance. The research's impact and why it matters to the field. Design. Design evaluates the quality, appropriateness, and rigor of the study design for the stated objectives. It outlines study structure including sample sources and research settings. Methods. The clarity and sufficiency of the methods section. Results or lessons learned. depending on the type of abstract. Whether the results or lessons learned are clearly presented and sufficiently detailed. And finally, conclusion. Whether the conclusions are clearly stated and supported by the data. Keeping these criteria in mind will help you craft a strong abstract. Some special considerations about innovation. The abstract must demonstrate originality, novelty, or a creative approach in ideas, methods, analysis, or interpretation. Scoring is as follows. 0 points. No new insights or approaches. Replicates existing work with no added value. 1 point. Minor adaptation or small variation on existing work. 2 points. Includes some innovative elements, but they are not well developed or clearly presented. 3 points. Work is innovative within its context, or shows a clear attempt at novel methods or questions. 4 points. Highly innovative work that could shift paradigms or substantially change understanding. Special considerations about design. Design is about the quality, appropriateness, and rigor of the study design for the stated objectives. Scoring is as follows. 0 points. Inappropriate or unclear design, critical flaws. 1 point. Basic design in place but with important limitations, for example it is bias, confounding. 2 points. Adequate design with moderate rigor, some limitations that weaken validity. 3 points. Appropriate, rigorous design for the type of study. For example, randomization, robust sampling, participatory approaches, saturation. 4 points. Strong rigor above and beyond expectations for study type, for example, multi-method triangulation, extensive stakeholder input, robust quality control. Let's look at the most common weaknesses we see in abstract writing. First, many abstracts have an unclear study question or hypothesis. If the main objective isn't stated clearly, readers can't tell what the study aimed to answer. We also encounter settings and populations described unclearly. Without basic context, where the study took place and who was included, interpretation becomes difficult. Another issue is methods that lack clarity or detail. When the design, sampling, or analysis aren't explained, reviewers can't assess the study's rigor. A frequent problem is a lack of concrete data. Broad claims without numbers, sample sizes, or effect measures weaken credibility. Some abstracts show limited analysis across key characteristics, overlooking important subgroups or comparisons. We also see overinterpretation, where conclusions go beyond what the data support or imply causality without justification. Overall, missing details and generic and/or stigmatizing language lead to low scores. Clear, specific, well-structured abstracts consistently perform better. First, we will examine a low-scoring abstract, a real example that received one of the lowest scores in the Union World Conference on Lung Health Review System. At first glance, it sounds important and uses impressive language, but on closer inspection, reviewers found it lacked clarity and substance. We'll go through it line by line to understand why. Throughout the analysis, we'll refer back to the reviewer scoring guidelines to explain how abstracts are assessed. Feel free to pause the video now to read through the text on the screen. Let's now look at the abstract together. We will start with relevance. What do reviewers look for? They check whether the abstract is focused on lung health, including tuberculosis and tobacco, and whether it aligns with the themes of the Union World Conference on Lung Health. Back to the abstract text, we find it focuses on childhood TB. Childhood TB is clearly relevant for the World Conference on Lung Health, so it earned a full score of 1 out of 1. Why does relevance matter? If your topic isn't related to lung health, for example micronutrient deficiency in pregnancy without any link to lung health, your abstract will receive a score of 0 and won't be reviewed further. Let's now assess the degree of innovation in this abstract, which highlights new aspects like novel methods or workflows in the research. The abstract title is Bridging the Gap in Childhood Tuberculosis, The Need for Action and Collaboration. The reviewers have seen countless titles referencing bridging gaps and raising awareness. There's nothing original here, no fresh methodology, no novel tools, no innovative approach. The authors state, to solve this problem, a project was planned to improve detection and response. It aimed to increase awareness, build capacity, and use better tools. But they failed to specify what's new. Better tools. Which ones? Build capacity. How? This is generic language that could apply to any TB project, anywhere. As a result, reviewers scored the abstract 0 or 1 out of 4 for innovation, entirely routine, with no new insights or approaches. Next, we will look at significance. Significance should explain the research's impact and why it matters to the field. The abstract claims importance by saying, tuberculosis continues to be a major public health challenge. There are still many undiagnosed cases, but that's not significance. It's merely a restatement of what is already widely known. There is no evidence to show how this project advances understanding, influences policy, or changes practice. Later, the abstract states, the project hopes that by doing these things detection will improve, and more children will be treated on time. But that's just a hope. There's no data, no outcomes, no demonstrated contribution. The authors are asserting significance without substantiating it. Reviewers noted, limited relevance, contributes little to current knowledge. Accordingly, the abstract received a score of 0 out of 4 for significance. Design evaluates the quality, appropriateness, and rigor of the study design for the stated objectives. It outlines study structure including sample sources and research settings. The authors state, a project was planned to improve detection and response. Yet the abstract never clarifies what type of study this is. Was it a clinical study, a community intervention, a policy evaluation? There's no sampling frame, no description of participants, no time frame, and no mention of data sources. The only hint is the vague statement. Some data were reviewed to understand the situation. Which data? From where? How were they analyzed? Reviewers concluded that the study design was either inappropriate or unclear, resulting in a score of 0 out of 4 for design. Here we look at the clarity and sufficiency of the methods. Here's what the abstract says. The approach involved health workers, communities, and stakeholders working together. Some diagnostic methods and awareness activities were also mentioned as part of the plan. But that's not a method. It's a vague outline of intentions. We're given no sample size, no duration, and no indication of what was actually measured. There's no description of the data collection process, no analytic approach, and no mention of ethical considerations. The comments from the reviewers were, very limited method description, unclear how work was conducted. This abstract warrants a score of 1 out of 4 for methods. Let's examine the results section, whether the results are clearly presented and sufficiently detailed. The abstract states, some data were reviewed to understand the situation. It was found that the gap is still big, and that children are particularly affected. And that's it. The gap is still big. No numbers, no trends, no comparisons, no analysis. A stronger abstract would include at least one quantitative or qualitative finding, depending on the method used, even if brief. For example, 100 out of 200 cases, that's 50%, with a 95% confidence interval of 43.1 to 56.9%, remained undiagnosed in children under 5. But here there's nothing to assess. Reviewers therefore scored the results section 0 or 1 out of 4, unclear, minimal, or confusing. Had the authors included figures and proportions, such as the prevalence of undiagnosed TB among children, with confidence intervals that would have demonstrated credible results and earned a score of 1 or 2. Similarly, a before-after analysis or a time trend analysis could have shown the impact of the intervention, and scored 3 or even 4 out of 4. The conclusion evaluates whether the conclusions are clearly stated and supported by the data. In this abstract, the conclusion reads, the TB detection gap among children is a serious issue. There is a clear need for better strategies, improved diagnosis, and more engagement. That's true, but these are statements of opinion, not conclusions supported by results. There's no link back to data, no evidence of impact, and no recommendation grounded in findings. So, under the scoring system, that's a 0 out of 1. Conclusions are unclear or unsupported.
If two abstracts present similar research, what specific qualities would make one score higher than the other?
Let's look at a high-scoring abstract now, to appreciate what reviewers look for in an outstanding submission. This was a highly scored abstract that exemplifies best practices across each criteria. Unlike generic abstracts that sound important, this one is specific and structured. Let's go through it line by line against the reviewer scoring guidelines so you can see exactly why it received high marks. Let's begin with relevance. Does the abstract focus on lung health, including tuberculosis and tobacco, and align with the themes of the Union World Conference on Lung Health? From its title, One-Day TB Diagnosis and Resistance Mapping with BD Max, MDR-TB and ONT-AMPOR, we can see that it focuses on TB diagnosis and comprehensive drug resistance profiling, both core topics in lung health. This abstract scores 1 out of 1 for relevance. Now let's move on to innovation, the originality, novelty, or creative approach in the ideas, methods, analysis, or interpretation. This abstract explicitly presents a defined workflow, integrating BD Max MDR-TB with ONT-AMPOR targeted NGS to deliver same-day, comprehensive resistance profiles from a single sputum sample, including drugs beyond rifampicin and isoniazid, such as components of BPAM. This is novel. Very few studies have assessed an 8-hour time-to-result TNGS approach in real-world settings. Score: 3 to 4 out of 4. Innovative within context to highly innovative. Now let's talk about significance. Assesses the potential impact of the research on science, policy, practice, or future research. There are no generic statements like, TB is a big problem. In this abstract, innovation is clearly linked to a practice-relevant outcome, same-day MDR or XDR profiling, enabling earlier and better-informed clinical decisions. The contribution is specific, actionable, and particularly important within the country context, Tajikistan and the wider region. Score: 3 to 4 out of 4. Now let's look at design consideration. A study design that's appropriate and rigorous for the stated aim, with enough structure to judge both validity and feasibility. This abstract clearly describes the materials used. Spiked samples derived from native sputum, covering a range of resistance profiles, alongside real clinical samples. And the settings: 2 hospitals, 1 in Germany, and 1 in Tajikistan. This abstract scores 3 or 4 out of 4, because the study design is appropriate, rigorous, and clearly described. In methods, reviewers look for enough operational detail to judge reproducibility, what was measured, how, for how long, and with what analysis. This abstract provides a step-by-step timeline to achieve same-day results, approximately 8.5 hours in total. It breaks down each stage: sample preparation, BD Max run, multiplex PCR, library preparation, targeted NGS, and analysis. It even names the software used, Stata 16.0. This level of detail allows reviewers to assess whether the methods align with the objectives and are likely to produce high-quality results. Also note the table included by the authors. The abstract submission system allows you to insert tables within the abstract sections. The system also allows you to upload files such as figures, but please remember to upload high-resolution files, otherwise the figures may not be readable. Score: 3 to 4 out of 4. Methods align with the objectives and are likely to produce high-quality results. Now let's turn to results. Concrete findings tied to your methods, including numbers, denominators, thresholds, and where relevant, failure rates. The abstract reports conditioned yields and failure rates, with a CT value of 28 or lower. 73% of clinical samples and 83% of spiked samples produced resistance profiles covering 12 or more antibiotics. Unsuccessful TNGS runs were 8% for clinical samples and 10% for spiked ones. Score: 3 to 4 out of 4. The results are bounded, quantitative, and decision relevant. And finally, we come to the conclusion, a supported, concise statement that reflects the results, not opinions or future hopes. This abstract concludes that integrating BD Max with ONT-based TNGS delivers a rapid, accurate, and comprehensive diagnostic solution, providing same-day results from a single sputum sample. And that's exactly what the data showed. Score: 1 out of 1. The conclusion reflects the results. Before you start writing, remember that a well-crafted abstract is your first impression on reviewers. These tips will help you make it clear, compelling, and aligned with the reviewer's expectations. Start by understanding your audience. Reviewers at the Union World Conference on Lung Health are looking for clarity, relevance, and innovation. Follow the expected structure: background, methods, results, and conclusion. Each part plays a role in telling your research story. Be clear and concise. Use direct language and avoid vague statements. For example, instead of saying some improvement was noted, say TB incidence dropped by 18% over 12 months. Planning ahead is important. Verify the submission deadline. Allow enough time to write your draft, and start early. Give co-authors enough time to review and comment. Remember that they may have several abstracts to manage. Always check the submission guidelines for formatting and content. Highlight what makes your work relevant and innovative. Show how it aligns with the conference themes and introduces new ideas. Use strong active language. For example, say, "We developed and tested," rather than, "A tool was developed." The passive uses more words than the active. Always check formatting and word count, as abstracts that exceed limits or miss required sections can be rejected. Before submitting, proofread and ask a colleague to review, and make sure you upload the latest version. Although we discourage the use of AI to develop abstracts, because the responsibility for the content lies with the authors, we recognize that using AI for proofreading can help. Make your abstract clear and concise. Number your examples and remove redundancies. Use abbreviations where possible, but spell them out the first time. Present data in tables for clarity. Do not include unnecessary statistical details, saying, "All effects were significant at p less than 0.01, may be enough." Once your abstract has been selected, you will need to start preparing your presentation. This also requires time and careful planning. Conference presentations are an important part of sharing your work and growing your academic career. Oral presentations may feel challenging, but they offer valuable opportunities for networking, receiving feedback to strengthen your analysis and interpretation, and building collaborations. Before submitting your abstract, use this checklist to make sure everything is in place. Structure and content include all required sections, background, methods or description, results or lessons learned, and conclusion. Make sure each section is clear and logically connected. Clarity and precision. Use specific, direct language and avoid vague phrases like "some improvement." Provide data, whether quantitative or qualitative, such as numbers, percentages, or confidence intervals. Keep sentences short and active, for example, "We developed," instead of "A tool was developed." Relevance and innovation. Align your abstract with the Union World Conference themes, such as lung health, tuberculosis, or tobacco. Highlight what's new, whether it's a method, tool, workflow, or approach. Scientific rigor. Describe the study design clearly, including type, setting, participants, and timeframe. Detail your methods, data sources, sample size, and analysis tools. Present results with concrete findings tied to your methods. Formatting and compliance. Respect word count and formatting guidelines. Avoid stigmatizing language and follow inclusive terminology. See the Words Matter language guide at stoptb.org. Check spelling, grammar, and consistency. Final steps. Proofread thoroughly and seek peer review. Confirm you're uploading the latest version, and verify all required fields in the submission portal are complete. Following this checklist will help ensure your abstract is clear, compliant, and ready for review.
Congratulations! You have completed How to Write a Strong Abstract for the Union World Conference on Lung Health. We hope you found it helpful and that you feel more confident about preparing your abstract for this year's conference.